Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Into the Pit, and I am so glad to welcome Mr. Brandon Alvis of A&E's Ghost Hunters. And how are you doing, Mr. Brandon?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Oh, believe me, the pleasure is all ours. I'm so glad that you agreed to come on. As I told you before we got started, we just want to get to know you.
Absolutely. I was born in Bakersfield, California, a place that's known for country music, actually. The
Buck
Bakersfield
Owens.
Sound. I worked for Buck Owens, actually.
No way.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to work at the Buck Owens Crystal Palace. That was one of my first jobs in the industry. Before that, I used to sell auto parts, and I worked at a pizza shop, but then I became a stagehand at the Buck Owens Crystal Palace. I started working my way up from when I was 16 years old to where I started doing sound, stage monitors, as well as front of house with the Buckaroos. And that's kind of where it all started for me, which is funny. So I went from Bakersfield and I started in the music industry at the Buck Owens Crystal Palace, and then eventually got my hands on a video camera and started to try and document everything I could about history. And then my love for the paranormal was always there, going back to when I was 8 years old. But I kind of took both of those loves of kind of investigative reporting and journalism and documenting that and putting that into the paranormal. So it kind of all goes back to Buck Owens, which is funny. So, strange upbringing. The way I came about into the paranormal field is a little different than others. But I grew up in Bakersfield, California, and started in the country music business, which is pretty funny.
Man, I have to ask you because I'm a big Buck Owens fan. What was he like?
He's a great guy. Funny. He was very big, tall guy, and he was full of life. Very, very nice man. I mean, I never had a negative interaction with him. So he loved his chicken fried steaks. So that was his thing, and he loved to play. He loved to entertain. One of the best entertainers I've ever seen. One of the best quotes I've ever heard about Buck Owens was, he was such a brilliant businessman that he can sell an igloo to an Eskimo. So the guy was just unbelievable.
I'm probably giving my age here, but I grew up watching Hee Haw. So that's where I got my love of Buck Owens,
Oh, yeah. He was a brilliant musician. Not only that, brilliant businessman and amazing musician. That's for sure. I listen to his music often. I have a few actual vinyl records still, and I love Buck. He's a big part of my life and an influence on me. That's for sure.
So you're a family man?
I am. Yeah. I just had my first child 2 months ago, almost 3 months ago now. So,
oh, no way.
Yeah. He's here now and he's doing his thing. He's over here sleeping, so I'm sure he'll be quiet through this whole thing, hopefully. But he's new to the world, but he's doing really well.
How long you been married, if you don't mind me asking?
Not married. I've been with my fiance for about almost 4 years now, going on 4 years. So It's great. Love it, man. She's a great person and a great mother, and a joy to be around.
So what does she think about all this?
She loves it, man. She's a huge fan of the show and has kind of seen the progression of my research over the years. I've been doing this since 2006, actively in the field. Mm-hmm. And I founded an organization called American Paranormal Research Association in 2006. And have been very fortunate and lucky enough to work with medical doctors, scientists, engineers that really helped me remain grounded in scientific principle and trying to incorporate scientific instruments and scientific ideology into our investigations. And she's been around for a number of years and has seen where I was able to take the way I investigated with my organization and kind of implement that now into ghost hunters. So it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool progression.
What's really cool about that is you're using actual scientific equipment, because there's so many people out there that are so skeptic of what we do. And here you have equipment that can't be refuted.
Right. Exactly. And that's huge for us. I've been doing this since 2006, and I've been lucky enough to work with a man named Dr. Harry Clore for about 10 years now. He's the only person in history to receive 2 PhDs simultaneously. And he has those in physics and chemistry. And he's always been there for me to reach out and say, hey, look, I'm trying to document a possible existence of life after death. How would I do this from your point of view? How would I do this scientifically? And he's not only given me a lot of guidance, but he's provided me a lot of equipment over the years and theory to go out there and say, hey, let's step out of the shadow of pseudoscience. Let's try and be taken more seriously, because there's a lot of people out there that believe, and they believe they have evidence that ghosts exist and that there is a life after death. And the next step is to take that and have science prove it. And a lot of people really kind of get upset about the idea of science getting involved in the paranormal, but it's not the big bad wolf. Science isn't there to say it's not real. We're there to try and take what some think they already know and prove that through scientific methodology and consulting these scientists and professionals and going that step further to be taken not only seriously by the public, but the scientific community as well.
See, that's fascinating to me. There's so many skeptics out there, and here you have very technical pieces of equipment that you can't go back and say, okay, this is, you faked it. You know
Exactly.
what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the beauty of the new season of Ghost Hunters is I reached out to these professionals, scientists and engineers that I've known for many years. And I said, I wanted to really step up the game. I wanted to go even further. And luckily having the platform of Ghost Hunters and working with A&E and Pilgrim Films, I have more access to that type of equipment now and a platform to do that. And I said, hey, if ghosts are real and these eyewitness reports of people seeing what they believe are disembodied human souls, right? If that's really happening, how would I document that? And I was lucky enough to be provided a piece of equipment. It's actually the first time I've talked about it on a show. So I'm really excited to talk about it now.
Thank you.
But yeah, no worries. But I was provided a camera called an EMCC camera. And what that is an electron multiplying camera. And this camera is typically used by the digital imaging scientific community to record what are referred to as photon events, single photon events. And photon events are light events. And photons, as well as light in particular, do carry electromagnetic radiation. So not only are we going into a realm of documenting something that typically is not seen by the human eye, but something that is carrying electromagnetic radiation. And there are certain people out there that have extra proteins within their eyes that can see these photon events with their own eyes. So the question was, if entities are manifesting, is it in the form of photons? And is it, because it's a photon and it does retain electromagnetic radiation, is that why we have EMF spikes? Is that why people have these sensations of feeling like they're being watched, or they're having almost panic attacks even at times? Because if there is a manifestation and these entities are manifesting via photons, there's radiation associated with that, electromagnetic radiation. And that camera was provided to me, and we took it out in the field and we captured some of the most amazing evidence in my 16 years of research that everyone's going to see on the new season of Ghost Hunters. So I'm really excited about that. Huge breakthrough, huge.
Well, you've piqued my interest, and you've actually brought some new questions. Knowing people with abilities, do you think that's part of why they have their abilities is because of these proteins and things?
It's very possible. Now we're opening up a larger question, right? Something we haven't talked about before in this field. We're going beyond SLS cameras and spirit boxes and things of that nature. Now we're opening up to scientific scrutiny and phenomena that we know is within the scientific realm and in the universe. But is that how these entities are manifesting? Is that why this is happening? And we're collecting some pretty significant data to say that that may be a possibility. And we've had it looked at by professionals, and no one has an explanation yet. And I can't wait for people to see it. But now this breakthrough is giving us something to look at, something to study, right? Not only if we're able to document photon events in the form of what people may think is manifestation, and that can be associated with what ghosts are. But like you said, if people have abilities and they have this extra sense, is there an explanation for it? Not to say it doesn't exist, but this is why it's happening. So it's exciting. I'm excited, and I just can't say enough about it. Very excited.
Wow, it's like you've opened up a whole new branch of science here.
That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to do, you know, and now we're collecting this significant data and providing this not only to the public, but the scientific community. Now the big question is, what is it? Why is it happening? At this point, we don't know why. So that would be considered paranormal, right? Above normal.
Well, exactly.
So we have to keep looking into it. We have to keep trying to document it, getting data, analyzing that data and comparing it, and it's exciting.
Are we going to be knowing you as Professor Brandon Alvis in the future?
You never know. You never know. But I'm just excited to do this, in the field. I've had a love for the paranormal for many years. In 1995, I lost my oldest brother to cancer, and in '04, I lost another brother to suicide. So that's where my interest in the paranormal began. It wasn't an experience I had. It wasn't because I lived in a haunted location or anything like that. I was just always very interested in the possibility of life after death, right? And I started to think, and I started to read everything I could get my hands on associated with that, from psychic phenomena, telekinetic, to scientific, and I started to look at it, and I always lived by Einstein's theory that energy is neither created nor destroyed. And
exactly.
Our bodies are made up of energy. We're firing off neurons right now, just our basic motor skills, everything is. So when that body dies, where does that energy go, and does it retain consciousness? That's really my big question. And now implementing this scientific equipment, trying to record photon events, thinking about the idea of there being electromagnetic radiation associated with that. Is there something to that? I think there might be, and I think that we have some really great evidence to say that it does.
Well, we've had all this technical talk right now, but what does Brandon like to do when he's not ghost hunting and doing all this scientific stuff?
When I'm not investigating the paranormal, I'm very much about, making film, documentaries, talking about history. I've been a filmmaker for a number of years. I did a film not too long ago called Cemetery Park, where I worked with a man named Stephen Schlater in exposing the corruption in the city government of Ventura, California, where they demolished 3 pioneer cemeteries illegally to create a park. And so I love to make film. I love to talk about history. And that's something I love to do, is to try and bridge the gap between the modern audience and history, try and bring information to light, research, and try and inform people and educate the public. That's what I love to do. Love it.
Talking about all the great stuff that you got going on, and of course you can't talk about it, but you give us a little hint about what you might have coming up?
Well, it's working on, documentary films. I can say it's probably going to be in the true crime realm, which is pretty cool. So I'm always a big fan of true crime and the history and investigation side of it. So the next project will most likely be in that realm, which will be pretty fun.
Oh, nice. Do you think you'll be doing anything on television with that, or are you just going to stick with the paranormal? Oh, okay.
We'll see. You never know. you never know.
Have me really curious now. So if you weren't doing this, what do you think you'd be doing?
Well, before I was doing this show with Ghost Hunters, I was actually working for ABC, CBS, and Fox News. I was a creative services producer, promotions producer, and worked in that business for about 5 years prior to jumping and going on to Ghost Hunters. So always been part of the investigative journalism side of things, the breaking information and breaking that down and providing it to the public. So I've always been in the film aspect, and the TV side of things. So that's always been something that's very important to me, and a great creative outlet, and something I'm very passionate about. So I would probably still be doing that if I wasn't doing Ghost Hunters, but now with doing this show, it's opening doors for me. And going forward, I'd like to, do bigger projects and really bring history to light, and, try and, educate the public in some way.
When y'all first came on board with the new Ghost Hunters, did you find that the fans were like accepting right away, or do you feel like maybe it took a little bit before they kind of warmed up to y'all?
Yeah, it took a little while. It took a while because, it's such an established show. Like you said earlier, it's the show that started it all. Ghost Hunters created the phenomena that we have now, with all of these thousands and thousands of paranormal groups throughout the country. Throughout the world, really, And to think that it was such an established show, the name recognition of Ghost Hunters, thinking of Taps, Jason and Grant, all of this, it was tough. But once people started to kind of settle in and watch how we conducted ourselves, that really helped. And I think now going into this new season, it's going to be even more comfortable for people, because now you're seeing that, we're not Taps. Taps was amazing. The methodology of Taps created it all, just like we talked about. And that's
Hmm.
why you had that original Ghost Hunters show and that original Ghost Hunters format, because that's the way TAPS conducted business. That's how they did their investigations. That was their protocol, their methodology. But now it's different. It's not the same show. It's got the same name, but it's a new team, and we do things a little differently. New technology, advancements. So we're doing things differently than the way TAPS did their investigations. That's because TAPS was their own organization, and now we're our own team. So it's a bit different now. So I think people have kind of settled in. They're seeing that we do things differently, but similar. We're very like-minded in a lot of ways. We're
Right.
very logical. We don't jump to conclusions. We're always looking for a natural explanation. And I think that really helps people understand, where we're coming from. And I think it's going to really help with this new season.
Well, this is your interview. It's supposed to be all about you, but I'm going to ask you a question about Grant.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
Okay, so is Grant like one of those real hard ass kind of guys, or was he more like bring you up under my wing kind of people?
Well, we are very lucky because we're all like-minded. So
Mm-hmm.
there never really was an instance with Grant where he had to say, "Hey, look, that's not how you do things." We are all very like-minded and very similar in our mindset. So we never had any occurrences like that, luckily. But there are times where he does have more experience than us. He's been doing this for over 30 years and conducted way more investigations than we've conducted. So there were times where he would, teach us a few things, but it was never in the sense of like saying we were wrong or whatnot. It was just situations we've never been in before, per se. But yeah, no, I mean, luckily we're all very like-minded, and we have a very similar mindset and protocol. And when it came to him and I working together, which, with my role on the team, a lot of it, I have to do a lot. I have to document a lot, do my best to try and make sure all the equipment's being used properly and we're getting the proper information to the client. So when him and I first met and sat down, it was spitballing back and forth. We were very like-minded, so very lucky in that regard.
Well, that makes for good chemistry. When you have to bring somebody in and teach them, like I guess kind of like they did in the earlier days, they would bring some people in and kind of teach them how things were done. But it's good that y'all do have a chemistry, and it seems like that showed up almost right away when we first started watching the show. I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you, I was a little skeptical, saying, well, this is not the same old Ghost Hunters that we used to watch. And I'm kind of glad it's not, because now we're
Yeah.
seeing a different side of Grant, and we're getting to see new ideas. I'm a big advocate for the para-unity, because there's too many groups out there that seems like we're better than you are, and we don't want you to know how we do things, and blah 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 blah. You know what? If you got a better way of doing things, I'm all ears. And if I've got
Yeah.
something that can help you, then by all means. I'm nowhere near an expert, and anybody that claims that they are, I think, is full of it. You're
Yep, I
always
agree,
learning.
100%.
I mean,
Yeah, and if someone has information that can be provided and to help the field, that's what we want, and that's what para-unity is, in my opinion. I think you hit the nail right on the head. It's not about knowing more than somebody. There's no experts in this field. I think one day we can get there if we do learn enough and we do have enough technology. There will be experts one day, but right now we're not there in any way, shape, or form. But if you have information that helps this field and it's furthering this field, that's got to be provided to everybody. Don't keep that secret and hold it from people and say you're better than them. You teach them. You share that information, and not only is sharing information, but having some kind of a public database one day would be really great. So I'm all about that as well. I think a lot of times that there's some bad practices in the paranormal field, and there's some equipment out there that's very questionable. But teach their own. If you want to use those things, go for it. That's all about it. But if we have information we can provide that can help the field, that's what we want to do. We're never going to keep that from people. And I think you said it perfectly.
Yeah, and skeptics to me make you a better investigator, because now you have to go and prove why what you found is what you found. And if I'm using a piece of equipment that a lot of people are, just gung ho about, but yet somebody like yourself can say, okay, this is why this is happening, and this is why it's not good. Well, you know what? Then I'll put that piece of equipment down, and I'm ready to move on to the next thing.
Right.
quite honestly, I like using the older methods. I do like the K2 meter and things like that. I don't know how y'all feel about REM pods, but I know there are certain things that can trigger these pieces of equipment, but I also know that I've used it in certain situations that there's no way anything else could have set it off.
Sure. Yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility. We're always open to trying new things, new techniques, and new methods. But there are certain devices out there that don't provide factual information or factual data or empirical evidence, which if you're providing that information to a client, you got to be on the money with it. And if you're providing them information that's contaminated or just basically out of your own belief system, that can be really dangerous at times. So,
Exactly.
With our protocols and the way we conduct our investigations is we want tools that provide us factual data and empirical evidence that can not only be tested by a technical industry, looked at by a scientist and engineer, but something that we can say, hey, look, we do not have a logical explanation for this. Therefore, we're not sure what to say, but here's the resolution we can provide you according to what the client wants out of the investigation. So that's where we're at with it. And sometimes I make comments like that and people get really upset about that. And I'm not doing that from a bad place. I'm not trying to say anyone's wrong per se. I'm just saying, hey, look, these pieces of equipment just don't provide factual information or empirical evidence. And if we want to move forward as a field and step out of the shadow of pseudoscience to be taken seriously, you have to kind of move on from that equipment. But hey, again, to each their own. Everyone has their own belief system. They're entitled to that. That's on their own belief system.
Well, Steve Gonzalez, had tried to explain it to me when I met him before, and I think the way he tried to explain it to me was not exactly what I needed to hear. But then when I talked to Daryl Marston and he explained it to me the way I guess it should have been explained to me in the first place, but then I understood where he was coming from. But in the same respect, we've used all these different pieces of equipment, but I guess I'm my own worst critic when it comes to evidence. So if you ever,
not a bad thing.
Well, if you get on any of our social media, you won't find a whole lot of evidence on there because, like I say, I tend to be pretty critical when it comes to that kind of stuff. And like you said, you could be very detrimental to the customer if you're going, oh yeah, man, look, this is exactly what this is. And you can't really prove that. The only true evidence that I could say, I want to say true evidence, but the most irrefutable type of evidence that I have has always been on camera or on EVP, on a digital recorder. And it's weird because it's probably the oldest equipment that we have,
Right. And that's the best. So, you know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with that because you can take that video evidence and you can take that audio evidence and you can have that tested, right? So for instance, you can have that video evidence tested by a video engineer, someone that can take it in and break it down, look at each thing, put filters on it, really look at it and tell you if it's some kind of natural anomaly or not. Same goes with the audio, right? You can take that into a spectrum analysis and you can really break it down frequency by frequency and say, hey, look, it's a stray radio frequency, it's a stray cell phone frequency, or it's something that sounds like human speech, but it's registering below that. So you can really test that, open that up to scrutiny, and have more information than something that can't be tested. So I think those are tried and true and tested. So nothing wrong with using those.
And then another thing is you have to realize that if somebody wasn't there to actually witness for themselves, then you could easily come back and say that, well, that was faked,
Sure, exactly. And that's why you open that up to that scrutiny, because a lot of times, even with the shows, that's one of the unfortunate things is when we do this show, people automatically, if they can't explain it off the bat, they're going to say it's staged or fake, even if they don't know what the equipment is or how the equipment works. That's just part of the territory, unfortunately. But that's why we always open ourselves up to that scrutiny. And I always consult these professionals I've talked to for many years. And I say, hey, look, this is what we got. Can you explain it? And if we're left with something unexplainable, that's when we take it to the client. So we always want to make sure we're doing the right thing.
I think my favorite episode, y'all had gone to a school and I guess the camera had caught something that looked like an apparition moving across, and I think Grant had got up and checked out the camera and noticed that there was lint.
Exactly. Yeah,
and I'm like,
I remember that.
Yeah, I'm sitting there, I'm watching, like, oh my God, look at that. And then when he looked at him, you know what? I need to be more critical of those kind of things, you know?
No, absolutely. It can be the most simple explanations, and it's tough sometimes. That's why going into these investigations, it's always good to remain unbiased, and going in and trying to say, hey, look, we're here to observe and report. Don't have a belief of what's happening. Listen to the client, listen to the testimony, listen to the eyewitness report, but go in and just observe and report back. That's it. It's tough to do sometimes, but if you're able to pull that off, it's the best way to investigate.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being on the show.
Not a problem. Not a problem. It was a great conversation. It was a nice interview to be able to talk about other things besides the paranormal, because it's all connected in the same way. So, different walks of life for different people, but we all have a common goal with investigating the paranormal and finding answers. So it was a great interview. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you to everyone that joined us. I hope you continue to support us. We've got lots of great guests that are still to come. I don't know if we're going to get any bigger than Brandon, though. I mean, come on.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, and I understand you also have a group on Facebook.
Oh yeah. It's Brandon Alvis Ghost Hunters. We have a group there. Also, we have my other team, American Paranormal Research Association, APRA, also known as APRA. So that's out there as well. And we're always providing information, trying to work with everybody, and hopefully have the answers everyone's looking for one day.
Po boy.